And welcome into Fantasy Football with Corey and Kyle. In this video, we're talking about Chase Brown and Chuba Hubbard and their surprising 2024 fantasy football results.
And if we think they'll do it again in 2025.
Now, before we get started, I'm going to invite you over to fantasyfootballadvice.com, where you can catch us and all of our other experts, articles, videos, podcasts, and you can join our community website where you can go on and chat with other fantasy football enthusiasts and ask questions and answer questions, ask polls, all kinds of stuff. It is a social media platform 100% dedicated to fantasy sports. So get over there and have a good time with us. All right, let's get into it. Kyle, the first person I want to talk about is Chase Brown. Now, what did you think about Chase Brown going into the 2024 season?
Going into the 2024 season, everybody was touting him up right from camp and all the coach speak about how proud of him everybody was and everything. But I was concerned because they brought in Zach Moss, and we saw what Zach Moss did in Indy. He was there covering for Jonathan Taylor, and everybody thought, he's clearly going to be the starter. Brown will be involved a little bit, but not – well, that lasted 3 weeks. And then Chase Brown took over that backfield and crushed it. So I was clearly very wrong about the potential of Chase Brown. And it was one of those polarizing things amongst the community. Like, I feel like half of the community believed he was going to break out and be really good. I don't think anybody expected him to be as good as he was. And then everybody else was kind of like me. The other half was kind of like me and was like, this is Zach Moss's backfield. So, yeah, man, it's a wild ride this year for him.
Well, it seemed like the coaching staff didn't want to let Chase Brown be the lead back. It almost felt like they wanted Zach Moss to be that guy. And, like you said, those first 3 weeks were really Moss heavy, and it was really frustrating to watch. The fourth week, they split pretty evenly. And then after that, it just kind of became Chase Brown. And then, of course, when Zach Moss went out, Chase Brown just took over. And he really took advantage of his opportunity. And you could see early on that it seemed like every time Brown touched the ball, it was like, this could be it. This could be it,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. They threw him the ball so much. He kind of gave me like Austin Ekeler vibes, or even maybe, and this is silly, but like old school CJ Spiller. Like when I first started playing and I like CJ Spiller, and it's like every time he touched the ball, that could be it. And they're throwing him the ball a lot. So he was racking up tons of points on receptions. And so he was a very valuable asset. And we just needed Zach Moss to get out of the way.
Yeah, for sure. And it was pretty clear the difference between the two because they seemed to trust Brown's hands throwing in the ball more than they did Moss's, on top of Brown just playing better when he got his shot. I mean, the fact that he barely played at all the first 3 weeks and sat out week 18 and still finished as the number 11 running back on the season in fantasy football is incredible.
Oh yeah, became a huge asset, an immediate start every week. It was incredible. I was lucky enough to have him on one of my teams, and I enjoyed writing that all the way to the championship, where then he got hurt on the goal line carry like in the first quarter and really screwed me over. But that's not the point. I'm not bitter or anything, but it is what it is. Yeah, I'm a little bitter, but okay, great breakout performance in 2024. Does he continue it going forward in 2025?
I think so. What I like to compare him to as far as a surprise breakout is kind of with Kyren Williams. And last year, like going into the draft, everybody was like, the Rams, Kyron's not really a workhorse, long term. They'll draft somebody. I think there'll be some chatter of that with Brown, but I think ultimately they stick with him. And I mean, he just played too well to replace him or to make him split reps. And so Yeah, I do think he should be drafted as a top 10 running back next year.
I actually agree with that. And when we say split reps, I mean, of course he's going to have relief. He's going to have to
Right.
sit out. Every team has it, right? There's very few like
Of course.
true workhorses and stuff. And you mentioned Kyron. Kyron, we always said, was super dependent on volume. That's why he scored so much. He's going to get volume. They brought in Corum. We were like, oh, he's going to get less volume, and he didn't. We were wrong on him too, but that's a whole nother video. But I think
Well,
Chase Brown's kind of in that same situation. He's getting a ton of volume. I don't see them really cutting into his volume that much going forward.
no, and even if they bring somebody else in, like Zach Moss will probably be gone. They might draft somebody.
Well, they have Khalil Herbert. I guess they could keep him around.
That's true. That is true. So, if he gets some reps next year, like this year, like I said, he didn't really play much in 4 games. He still had 229 carries and 54 receptions on the season. I don't see any I feel like his floor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
He had
especially
65 targets. 65 targets.
like
Oh
think
my
about
gosh.
this though. If they can improve that defense at all during the offseason and keep possession, like get more possessions, maybe nurse some leads, he could improve on that volume very easily.
Yeah, you're right. That offense, for as high powered and how many weapons they have, that team struggled this year, right?
Well, they
Like
had
we
to
said, that
throw
was
so much. They were throwing a ton.
yeah, that
Jamar Chase was the number one receiver by a long shot because they were
yeah,
throwing the ball so much.
yeah, that team. We had talked about biggest disappointments on the season, talking about like San Fran and Cincinnati, and
Yeah.
Cincinnati was a huge disappointment, let down this year, and so it, like you said, he didn't really get to shine as much as he could next season. He has a lot of potential in 2025. Like I said, I think he's an easy top 10 running back after being, gosh, who knows when he was drafted this year. I mean, late rounds.
That's the thing. He was such a bargain because
So
even the people that believed in him knew they could wait.
Yep.
And I know for sure in every draft I was in, I don't know the stats overall for ADPs, but all the drafts I was in, Zach Moss went first.
Yep. Absolutely.
So, yeah, he was such a bargain. He's one of those league winner type picks.
Yep. Great pick there. All right, let's move on to the next guy. Now, we did a video. Our most controversial video in the offseason was about Jonathan Brooks getting drafted to the Panthers and how disappointing it was and how, whatever. Okay, so we talked about that. They retooled their offensive line. Don't you know anything? Blah, 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 right? Yeah, but they still had Bryce Young at quarterback, and the team was still pretty much in shambles. Okay, whatever. They overpaid for some offensive linemen. It is what it is. And then Chuba Hubbard comes on board here. They get Andy Dalton in there, and that offense starts freaking working. What the heck happened there? Something we definitely didn't see coming. After week 1, I felt really good. 1.4 points from Chuba Hubbard. Told you so. The next week, 11 points. Okay. And then he just blew up. What happened there, man?
I don't know. And he missed 2 games at the end of the season too against Tampa Bay and Atlanta, and
Yep.
he finished number 17. Like, because I mean, watching him the 2 years before that, he looked very pedestrian.
Yes, very.
Like, he looked like a career backup, and he came in this year. I'm thinking, Jonathan Brooks will be back halfway through the season, completely take over a workhorse role.
Yep.
And I was so wrong. Like, even when Brooks did come back, they worked him in very slowly. Never had more than just a split with Hubbard before he got hurt again. And, I was hesitant because of Brooks to draft him in redraft, but then in Dynasty, you couldn't give him away last offseason after that.
He got traded around. Yep.
And now he signed a new 3-year extension. Like, even in Dynasty, like, I'm probably trying to buy this guy. Like, I don't think they might draft somebody. They're not going to draft somebody as high as they drafted Brooks again. Like, they signed this guy. They believe in him. He looked the part this year. Like I say, I don't know how he made it work with that horrible offensive line, but he did.
Yep.
And that's the sign of a really good running back. Maybe it just took him a little bit of time after college to kind of get his sea legs under him in the league. I don't know, but definitely looked legit this year.
Well, I think quarterback play comes into it a bit there, right? Because the kind of elevated quarterback play where they had to actually respect the pass a little bit more. And then Bryce Young, we saw an evolution of Bryce Young where he really came into his own. And I think sitting out for a little bit and getting to watch and learn from more of a veteran and learn the game a little bit. Because, those first picks like that kind of get just thrown into the fire immediately. And it can really ruin a young quarterback. And then you see some guys get to sit behind a veteran and they learn the game for a year or two and then they excel. So those guys who get thrown into those bad situations with a bad offensive line where you're scrambling all the dang time, your offense is just in shambles, and you don't really get to actually sit back and learn. And I feel like that is very underrated, right? And kind of disappointing sometimes. We're like, I want to be a starter. I was a top draft pick. Well, heck, they benched Bryce Young, and then he came back super, super strong, and his play has turned out to be fantastic, where I was not a believer. And now I'm actually kind of starting to believe in Bryce Young's development a little bit. So I feel like that elevates and helps Chuba Hubbard too, because those defenses actually have to respect the rest of the offense. They're unable to just hone in on him. I think that helps a lot.
Yeah,
now,
I completely agree. It's funny you say, sit behind him for a year or two and learn. It took him part of a year behind Dalton, who's way past his prime.
Yep.
And he found another gear during those games.
Yep. Something about it motivated him. He learned. I don't know what it is, but
something clicked.
Something was good for him, and it helped. Okay, let's talk about moving forward into 2025. We've already talked about it a little bit as we think it's going forward. Right now, just silly observation, Sleeper has Jonathan Brooks listed as the starter on the depth chart. Ignore that. Jonathan Brooks may not even play in 2025 at all. He may not be recovered. He may not be playing. It is Chuba Hubbard right now. That is the running back. They have Miles Sanders and whatever. Okay, Miles Sanders isn't really a threat or anything. Chuba Hubbard, they signed him to that new 3-year deal. They believe in him, and they're keeping him around. So you should do the same.
For sure. Like you said, Brooks might not play in 2025. Even if he plays in 2026, back-to-back knee injuries like that, that's going to be tough to bounce back from and be the same kind of player. Like, that's going to zap, a lot of energy and quickness and, and it's mentally, it's going to be hard for him for a long time to cut the same way and accelerate the same way. And so dude, Jonathan Brooks is essentially out of the picture for, probably the next 2 years.
The one reason we discounted Chuba for the most that we discounted him is now out of the picture.
Like you say, they might add somebody this offseason, but they're not going to go as high as a Jonathan Brooks again. They'll go for a backup, someone better than Miles Sanders,
Yes.
But they're not going to draft a first 3 rounds type of running back again. So,
well, the thing about this offense is with the emergence of Bryce Young, right now they can focus on other positions. They've kind of got, they've got quarterback and running back locked up now, right? They're not going to have to draft another quarterback like they might have been thinking, oh, crap, we got to look for another young quarterback because maybe Bryce Young's a bust. They're not having to worry about that now. They're not having to worry about going and locking up a running back because they've got one. So now they can concentrate on improving that offensive line. And they're probably going to have to get some more receiving options because Adam Thielen's getting really old. He's reliable, but he's getting really old. At some point, maybe he will fade off. I don't know if that's even possible at this point.
They have a couple of young guys at receiver with some upside.
But they could
Leggett and Coker.
Yeah.
But there's not like a true number one guy.
Right. And I feel even at tight end, they're kind of doing okay. Like they've got good enough tight ends and Sanders and Trimble. Maybe even Ian Thomas. Like they're fine, right? So they don't really need to look for a top one.
I think Sanders has a ton of upside at tight.
I do too. So I feel like they could really concentrate on some offensive line this offseason, and it could be even better next year because they've got a lot of these skill positions kind of in a good spot. So going forward, I feel really good about Chuba Hubbard. And so, yeah, surprisingly, I'm on the Chuba Hubbard train.
Yeah, I'm on the Hubbard bandwagon for next season. Not drafting quite as high as like a Chase Brown.
Oh, no.
But once you get through that first maybe 10 to 12, he's going to be right there next. So, like,
yeah,
once you get down into rounds 4 and 5, that's where I'm starting to look at Chuba Hubbard as, especially if you're going 0 or B early. If you're grabbing receivers and tight ends early, he makes a fine running back 1 or 2 for that kind of strategy. So,
agreed. And I think the volume is going to be there to pay off. So, yep, I'm buying into Hubbard next year, and I missed on him this year. That's for sure. All right. As we wrap this up, guys, I want to invite you one more time back to fantasyfootballadvice.com where you can see all of our content, all of the rest of our team, and then you can sign up and get on our social media network, 100% dedicated to fantasy sports. And you can find us and all of our other creators and other brands and their creators and everything all on the same thing, on the same social network. Join us over there. And until next time, good luck.
See you next time.